Hello everyone, this is Pooja Sharma and welcome back to Vysh YouTube channel. I am back with Geography Class 11th NCERT series and today we will be reading about the final chapter, which is chapter 7, which deals with natural hazards, natural disasters and how they are caused and their management. So before we begin, these are the contact details of Vysh IAS. If in case you people are interested to enroll for our test series, you can contact on this number on WhatsApp. You can even email us and you can also visit our YouTube channel for more such videos which will help you for your UPSC preparation, and also it will help you to cover syllabus of your other government exams also. So let's begin. So we can understand the phenomenon of natural hazards and natural disasters with the simple meaning of change. So change can occur everywhere and it occurs with variations in the terms of magnitude, which is the size, and the intensity. The intensity is how much it causes damage. It is whether it is low intensity or high intensity, and also the scale, whether it happens over a large scale area or a small scale area. So it can be gradual or slow process like the evolution of landforms and organisms, and also it can be sudden and swift like tsunamis, volcano eruptions, thunder and lightning and earthquakes. So this can be also confined to a small area which takes place for very less time, like few seconds or minutes, in the form of hailstorms, tornadoes and dust storms. And it can also have global dimensions as well, which will impact globally, like global warming and the depletion of ozone layer. So from the point of nature's perspective, these changes are value neutral. It is neither good nor it is bad. But for human beings, in their when we look from the point of view of human beings, these will be very much value loaded. And some of these changes, they'll be good and desirable, but other changes will be bad and undesirable. Now good changes are like change in seasons, ripening of fruits, but bad ones are these sudden natural disasters like earthquakes, floods, and this is of course a man-made phenomenon, that is wars. So these are considered bad and undesirable. So these changes which take place, they have haunted humankind for a very long time, and people have feared from these natural disasters in general. So what is a disaster? Disaster is an undesirable occurrence which results from the forces that are outside our control, and it will strike very quickly without any warning, and it will be very unpredictable. So this will cause a threat to our human life, and there will be a loss of life, property in the form of death and injury to multiple people or a large number of population. So therefore this requires mobilization of efforts in excess also, and this can be provided by the statutory emergency services. And from a long time what has happened is, these disasters, they have been considered as a consequence of natural forces, but the real or the reality is that some of the human activities are also directly and indirectly responsible for these disasters to occur. So as you can see over here, this is the picture of Bhopal gas tragedy, and this is the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, also the wars, then the release of chlorofluorocarbons which cause the depletion of ozone layer, and then we have also contributed in the increase of greenhouse gases, environmental pollutions like noise pollution, air pollution, water pollution and soil pollution. So these are some of the disasters which have been caused by human beings directly. So there are other human activities also which tend to speed up or intensify disasters indirectly. For example, landslides, then floods. So these mainly occur because of deforestation, unscientific use of land, then construction activities in sensitive areas which are very much prone to such disasters. So all these are indirect human actions which result in these disasters. So these human-made disasters, if we notice or observe, they have been increasing over the past few years in numbers as well as the magnitude. So now joint efforts at various levels have been taken place to prevent and minimize these occurrences, but there has been very less success rate. But it is not impossible to prevent some of these disasters which are created by human beings. But on the other hand, when we look at natural disasters, it is very minutely or very little much is possible to prevent natural disasters, because they will be natural in nature. They will not be created by human beings. So the best way to find out a solution for natural disasters is the mitigation and the management. So as you can see in the picture, this response and recovery, this takes place after the event has occurred, after the disaster, and before the disaster which is going to be which will take place. We have to be prepared and we should know how to mitigate it or reduce it. So there has been this establishment of the National Institute of Disaster Management, and also many summits like the Earth Summit at Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, which took place in 1993, and also the World Conference on Disaster Management in May 1994 at Yokohama, Japan. So these are some of the concrete steps which have been taken towards this direction to prevent such disasters at different levels. So many scholars, they have used disaster and natural hazards as synonyms, but both are different from each other, and it is very important to distinguish between both of them, because natural hazards, they are elements of circumstances in the natural environment which have the potentiality to cause harm to the people or the property. But on the other hand, natural disasters, they will directly take place without any warning and suddenly. But natural hazards are like, they will give us warnings at every point of time that, if you do this in the long term, this can happen. But when it comes to natural disasters, we don't get such warnings. So that is what they are trying to tell us about the difference. So these natural hazards, they can be swift or permanent aspects of the respective environmental settings. So as I said, permanent aspects can be in the form of long term, what they can cause in the long term. So suppose currents in the oceans, the steep slopes and the unstable structural features in the Himalayas, or the extreme climatic conditions in the deserts or glaciated areas. So now, for example, we know that when we construct anything on a steep slope, there are high chances of that area facing a landslide. So like that, we will already have a clue or an idea of the possible dangers associated with it. But these natural disasters, as I said earlier, they'll be relatively sudden and they'll cause very large scale destruction, widespread deaths, loss of property. Then also it will disturb the social systems and it will take over the life of people with little or no control. So any event, it can be categorized as a disaster if the magnitude of this destruction and the damage which is caused by it is very high. So this is to summarize the difference between both of them. This is a dangerous situation that poses a threat. So this is again, it's telling us in the future tense, but this is an event that has completely caused damage to human life and property. So this has less critical consequences, but this will have more critical consequences. This will take full shape after a series of events which might have led it to happen, and this will happen in one single short time, which will cause more severe effects. So no two disasters will be the same, and every disaster is unique in its own term, how it deals with its local socio-environmental factors, then the social response which it will generate, and how each social group will handle it. So 3 important things to be noted is that firstly the magnitude, intensity and frequency and the damages which is caused by the natural disasters, they have increased over the years. And the growing concern among the people all over the world is how to deal with these problems which is created by these disasters, so that the loss of human life and property will be minimized. And then one more thing has been noticed, that there have been significant changes in the pattern of these natural disasters over the years. So the change in perception of the natural disasters and hazards is that previously hazards and disasters, they were seen as too closely associated and interrelated phenomenon. They used to think that they both have a cause and effect relationship, but this is not true. Earlier they used to think that areas prone to natural hazards, they were more prone to disasters. So people avoided tampering with the delicate balance that existed in that particular ecosystem where the situation is little sensitive. So people avoided intensification of their activities in such areas, and that is how disasters were less damaging. But recently, because of technological power, it has given a large capacity to human beings to intervene in nature. So when this interference of human activity takes place, that is when things get worse. So now what has happened is, human beings, they tend to intensify the activities into disaster prone areas, increasing their chances to disasters. So some of it can be in the form of colonization of floodplains of most of the rivers, and then development of large cities and port towns like Mumbai and Chennai along the coast, and also touching the shore due to high land values. So all this will make them prone to the occurrence of cyclones, hurricanes and tsunamis. So these observations, it can be related by the data which is given in the table, which shows the magnitude of death, the amount of death that has been caused by 12 serious natural disasters which have taken place in the last 60 years. So it is evident that these natural disasters have caused a lot of widespread of life as well as property. And now at various levels, joint efforts have been taken place to take appropriate measures to deal with the situation. And it is also being felt that damages which are caused by natural disasters, they have global impact or repercussions as well. So this is beyond the means and capabilities of individual nation states to cope up with. So in such a situation, what should happen is, that's why they have formed these organizations at international level, so that countries can help each other, or members of the United Nations or such organizations which can help each other at such times. So hence this issue was raised at the United Nations General Assembly in 1989, and it was finally formalized at the World Conference on Disaster Management in May 1994 at Yokohama, Japan. So as we read about it in the earlier slide, so this was eventually called the Yokohama Strategy and the Plan of Action for a Safer World. So now we're going to read about the Yokohama Strategy in detail. So this Yokohama Strategy of Plan of Action for a Safer World, it is guideline type of action which can be used for the reduction of natural disasters. So the member states of the United Nations and other states, they met at the World Conference on Natural Disaster Reduction, and they met in the city of Yokohama from May 23rd, 27th in 1994. So they acknowledged that the impact of natural disasters in terms of human and economic losses, it has risen in the recent years, and it also accepted that these disasters, they have affected the poor and the disadvantaged groups which have been hit worst by these disasters. So particularly in developing countries which are ill-equipped and they don't have the right mechanism to cope up with such disasters, they help particularly these countries. So the conference adopted the Yokohama Strategy as a guide for the rest of the future to mitigate the losses due to these disasters. And the resolution of the World Conference on Natural Disaster Reduction are as follows. So it will note that each country has the sovereign responsibility to protect its citizens from natural disasters, and it will give priority attention to developing countries, particularly least developed, the landlocked countries and the small island developing states. And then it will develop and strengthen national capacities and capabilities, and also take appropriate national legislation for natural and other disaster prevention, mitigation, as well as preparedness. Also, they will even include the mobilization of NGOs and participation of local communities at the grassroots level. It will also promote and strengthen the sub-regional, regional and international cooperation in many activities to prevent, reduce and mitigate natural and other disasters, with particular emphasis on human and institutional capacity building and strengthening. Then technological sharing by the collection of data, then awareness through spreading of the information and utilizing that information for the application. And finally, mobilization of resources. Also, this decade of 1990 to 2000, it was declared as the International Decade for Natural Disaster Reduction. So classification of natural disasters. So all over the world, human beings have experienced a lot of disasters. They have faced it also, and they have lived with them also. So now people are becoming very aware of such natural disasters, and various steps have been initiated at different levels for mitigating the effects of disasters. So the identification and classification of disasters, it is being considered as an effective and scientific steps to deal promptly and efficiently with the disasters. So broadly, natural disasters can be classified under 4 categories, which is the atmospheric, which happens in the sky or above the ground. Then we have terrestrial, which happens on the ground. And then we have aquatic, which takes place underwater, and biological can be invasion of certain plant community or alien species, or like insects and infestation, or fungal and bacterial and viral diseases. So even COVID, which is going on now, that is one form of biological disaster only. Then India is one of those countries which has experienced most of the natural disasters, which is seen in the table, and every year it loses thousands of lives and property worths of billions of rupees due to these natural calamities. So natural disasters and hazards in India. So as we all know that India is a vast and diverse country in terms of its physical and socio-cultural attributes. It is largely due to this vast geographical area, environmental diversities and cultural pluralities. The scholars have often called it the Indian subcontinent and the land of unity in diversity. So the vastness in terms of natural attributes, it is combined with its prolonged colonial past, continuing various forms of social discrimination, and also equally large population have enhanced its chances to prone to natural disasters. So some of the major natural disasters in India, like earthquakes, tsunami, tropical cyclones, landslides, droughts and floods. So all these have taken place, out of which we will learn about earthquakes, tsunami and tropical cyclone in this video, and in part 2 we will read about landslides, droughts and floods. So earthquakes, they are the most unpredictable and highly destructive of all the natural disasters, and they are tectonic in origin, the most devastating, and their area of influence is also quite large. So this will result from a series of earth movements which are brought about by sudden release of energy during the tectonic activities. When the plates move, the surface plates or the plates which are beneath the earth crust, when they start moving, so earthquakes will occur. And as compared to these, the earthquakes which are associated with volcanic eruption, rockfall, landslides, subsidence, and particularly in the mining areas and also the impounding of dams and reservoirs, they will have a limited area of influence and scale of damage. It will be limited in this case, in this scenario. But these earthquakes which should be tectonic in origin, they will cause a little high damage. Not little, they will cause a lot of high damage. So the Indian plate has been moving at a speed of 1 centimeter per year towards the north and northeastern direction, and this movement of plates, it has been constantly obstructed by the Eurasian plate from the north. So imagine that this is the Indian plate, for example, and this is our Eurasian plate which is on the top north. So this Indian plate from the south, it's moving upwards and it is crashing with that Eurasian plate in the north. So these both, when they crash together, in between both the plates, the force which is getting exerted from both the sides is getting collected in between the plates. So what happens is, as a result of this, both the plates, they have been locked so tightly because of the pressure from either sides. So this will result in the accumulation of energy at different points of time, and this will cause building up of stress, and it will lead to breaking up of the lock, and sudden release of energy will cause earthquakes along the Himalayan arch from the north to northwest eastern, as we all know that stretch of Himalayas which is there in the north. So some of the most earthquake prone zones are states like Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Uttarakhand, Darjeeling, all the 7 states of northeast, and the subdivision of West Bengal. So apart from these regions, the central western parts of India also, particularly Gujarat and Maharashtra, they have also experienced some severe earthquakes in the past, and earth scientists, they have found it very difficult to explain the occurrence of earthquakes in one of the most oldest and stable mature landmass, that is the peninsular block, for a very long time. But recently there has been this emergence of a theory which says that there is a fault line and an energy build-up along the fault line which is represented by the river Bhima, which is a tributary of Krishna, near Lathur and Osmanabad, which is in Maharashtra. So this is one theory which says that it can cause a possibility of breaking down of the Indian plate because of the energy which is getting built up, as we saw in the previous example of the Indian plate and the Eurasian plate. Here also this fault line is building up this energy or pressure in between it, and then many such centers or such institutes like the National Geophysical Laboratory, then the Geological Survey of India, Department of Meteorology, then Government of India, and along with the recently formed National Institute of Disaster Management, they have made an intensive analysis of more than 1,200 earthquakes that have occurred in India in different years in the past. And based on this, they have divided India into the following 5 earthquake zones, that is the very high damage risk zone, then high damage, moderate damage, low damage, and very low damage. So the first 2 zones, which is the very high damage and the high damage risk zone, they have been prone to more, they have experienced more devastating and disastrous earthquakes in India. So mainly the areas in the very high damage risk zone include northeast states, areas to the north of Darbhanga and Araria along the Indo-Nepal border in Bihar, this region, then Uttarakhand, western Himachal Pradesh around Dharmshala, and the Kashmir Valley in the Himalayan region, and also the Kutch, which is in Gujarat. So these are very high damage risk zones. Then in the high high damage risk zone, we have the remaining parts of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, eastern parts of Haryana, Delhi, western Uttar Pradesh, northern parts of Punjab and northern Bihar. They fall under the high damage risk zone. So remaining parts of the country, they fall under the moderate to very low damage risk zone, and most areas that are considered to be safe are the stable landmass covered under the Deccan Plateau. So the socio-environmental causes of earthquakes are as follows. So the idea of an earthquake, it is often associated with fear and horror because of its large scale area which it covers. Also the magnitude and the suddenness, the unpredictable nature of earthquake, and also the way it spreads disasters on the surface of earth. So it becomes a calamity once it strikes the areas of high density population, and it not only damages and destroys the settlements, infrastructure, transport and communication network, but also other developmental activities. It also robs the population of their material, socio-cultural gains which have been preserved over the many years. It renders many people homeless, even wildlife and animals, which put an extra pressure and stress, particularly on the weaker sections of the economy of the developing countries. So effects of earthquake. So as we all know that earthquakes have disastrous effects on an area of their occurrence. Some of the important ones are like on ground they form these fissures or cracks. Then landslides will occur, then there will be liquefaction, earth pressure, then they'll have possible chain effects also. And on man-made structures, collapse, the building getting collapsed, and on water they can cause tsunamis. So apart from these, earthquakes also have some serious and far-reaching environmental consequences. Like the surface seismic waves, they produce fissures on the upper layers of the earth crust, through which water and other volatile material can gush out. This volatile material means the lava, or the lava which can come out, and this will flood the neighboring areas. Also, earthquakes are also responsible for landslides, and often they cause obstructions in the flow of rivers. So imagine there's a mountain and then on the foothills there's a river flowing. So suppose 1/4 of the land, when it gets cut and slides down and falls on the river, and suppose if that land area is too big, which is covering the width of the river, it will cover this river like a blockage. So then this will result in the formation of reservoirs. Also sometimes rivers also change their course. So earthquakes, basically what is earthquake? It will cause shaking type of movement on the surface of earth. So this shaking sometimes can cause a river to change its direction, which will cause floods and other calamities in affected areas. Then the earthquake hazard mitigation. So unlike other disasters, the disasters which is caused by earthquakes, they are more devastating, and since it destroys most of the transport and communication links, it is very difficult to reach the victims on time and to provide them timely relief. Also, it is not possible to prevent the occurrence of an earthquake because it is very unpredictable and sudden. So the next best option is to emphasize on disaster preparedness and mitigation rather than focusing on the curative measures, because sometimes caution is much better than cure. So establishing earthquake monitoring centers, seismological centers for regularly monitoring and sharing of information among the people in predictable areas. So what happens is, these seismological centers, they will monitor these seismic waves which are happening in the earth's inside the earth crust. So through the frequency, the wavelength, they'll understand if these waves are very high or low. Then use of geographical positioning systems that can be of great help in monitoring the movement of tectonic plates. and preparing a map which includes earthquake prone regions of the country, and also creating awareness about the possibilities by sharing such information among the people and educating them, making them aware about the ways and means also to minimize the adverse impacts of disasters. So here a small example is how when we tell people to vacate the building whenever we feel a sense of shaking in the building, which will be the starting signal of a earthquake. So immediately they'll tell everyone to vacate the building. So that is one such method. Like that, other methods are also there. And also modifying the house types and building designs in the earthquake prone areas, and also discouraging construction of high rise buildings, large industrial establishment, and also big urban centers in such areas. And finally, making it mandatory to adopt earthquake resistant methods and designs, and also to use light material in major construction activities in such areas. Then we have our then we have our tsunamis. So many a times earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, they'll cause the sea floor to move abruptly, which will result in the sudden displacement of water in the form of high vertical waves. So this is only called the tsunamis, or the harbor waves, or the seismic sea waves. So normally the seismic waves, they'll cause only one instant vertical wave, but initially after the first disturbance, a series of after waves will get created in the water, which will start oscillating between the high crest to low trough in order to restore the water level. And the speed of the wave in ocean, it will depend upon the depth of the water. So it will be more in shallow water than the ocean deep. So what happens is, in the deep ocean, the wave will, even if the wave is high, it will start from the sea floor, right? So the ocean depth will be so much that by the time this high vertical tide will reach till the surface, it will calm down. But in areas where the water is very less or it is shallow, here when it starts from the surface, this will get more area to rise high, and the vertical wave will be very higher in this shallow water region, because there will not be water to calm down the wave. So as a result of this, the impact of tsunami, it will be less over the ocean and more near the coast, where it will cause large scale devastations. So that's why what happens is, when a ship is at the sea, it will not get affected much by the tsunami. So it will be very difficult to detect a tsunami in the deeper parts of the sea, because by the time it reaches the surface, it will eventually calm down. So over the deep water, the tsunami will have a very long wavelength and limited wave height. So it will have more surface when it is beneath the water to spread. The water will spread beneath the ocean in the ocean depth, and so the wave height won't be able to reach till the surface, because it will get distributed in the wavelength. But what happens is, it is different in the case of near the coastal areas. So a tsunami wave, it will raise the ship only by a meter or two, and with each rise and fall of the wave, it will take time, because the water will spread eventually and calm down in the ocean itself. But when a tsunami enters the shallow water, its wavelength will get reduced. It will not have much area on either sides, and it won't have much time also to spread the water equally or distribute the water. So because of this, it will increase the wave height. It will cause high waves like this. So this height can go up to 15 meters or more, which can cause large scale destructions along the shores. And thus this is also called as the shallow water waves. So this mainly occurs in the regions of Pacific Ring Fire, the tsunamis, they occur in these regions. Then along the coast of Alaska, Japan, Philippines and other islands of the Southeast Asia like Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Sri Lanka and India. All these countries in this region. And you can see Pacific Ocean is also here. So our ring of fire will be somewhere over here. around the Pacific Ocean. So after reaching the coast, the tsunami waves, they'll release enormous energy stored in them, and water flows turbulently into the land, destroying port cities, towns, structures, buildings, and other settlements. So since the coastal areas are densely populated over the world, and these are also centers of high intense human activity, the loss of life and property will be likely much higher by a tsunami as compared to other natural hazards in the coastal areas. So the extent of the devastation which is caused by a tsunami, it can be seen through the visuals of the Banda Aceh, in Indonesia. So unlike other natural hazards, the mitigation of hazards which are created by the tsunami is very difficult, mainly because of the losses which are on a much larger scale, and it is beyond the capacity of individual states or government to mitigate the damage. So hence combined efforts at international levels are possible ways of dealing with these disasters, as it has been in the case of the tsunami that occurred on 26 December 2004, in which more than 3 lakh people lost their lives. Also, India has volunteered to join the international tsunami warning system after the December 2004 tsunami disaster. Over here, the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami which took place. Also, I had to complete tropical cyclone also in this video, but I couldn't complete that part due to shortage of time. So in the next video I'll include that also. So I will include a tropical cyclone with the other 3 remaining natural disasters which I have to teach about, that is floods, landslides and droughts. Also disaster management. So please like, share, comment and share these videos with as many people as possible who need them, not only for UPSC preparation but even for other government exams. It will help them complete their syllabus either directly or indirectly. So I'll be back soon with part 2 of this chapter. Until then, all the best and thank you.